All right, thanks for joining us here on a Wednesday edition of Weather Underground. I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson, also joined in the lab today by our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb. You know, everybody talking tropics today because of Hurricane Otis's almost unfathomable intensification. This was something we have never seen, and man, it was mind-blowing and worst-case scenario for places like Acapulco.
Yeah, that far east where it's never happened before to rapidly intensify to a Cat 5 right offshore when it's not anticipated to be that strong into a large metro area, that's the worst kind of hurricane scenario.
Yeah, you always talk about worst-case scenarios, and that's exactly what we saw with Otis. National Hurricane Center last night had some very ominous wording in their discussion. I mean, we look at this thing from space. You point out, Mike, last hour, all the lightning surrounding the eye. But anyway, National Hurricane Center said no hurricanes on record even close to this intensity for this part of Mexico.
Truly a historic landfall, the highest wind speed at landfall of any West Coast Mexico hurricane. Unfortunately, 165-mile-per-hour winds. The images that we're getting out of Mexico, honestly, are pretty sparse at this point, which is a little concerning. So you're worried about how much communications have been affected in Mexico, not to mention how much damage there could be to infrastructure, a lot of flooding that could have taken place there. But the wind speeds were intense. Yeah, and when you have a Cat 5 coming ashore into that concave-shaped coastline near Acapulco, you're going to have the strong winds. You're going to have the rain-induced floods and mudslides as it heads into the mountains. You're also going to have storm surge and waves. Yeah. So everything that you would associate with the Cat 5 hitting a populated area, the images, I think, are going to be very, very stark. Yeah, again, I mentioned we don't have a whole lot to show you, but want to show you what it looked like early this morning when it came ashore here with those 165-mile-per-hour winds. You can see how the palms were really taking a beating, unfortunately, when it came in the middle of the night. I know. Pretty scary stuff when it's dark outside and you got a major hurricane making landfall, of course, one of this intensity. And there has been some damage. We've seen some damage. We know there's damage to the extent we don't know that quite yet.
Right. And it was by yesterday morning, you know, the hurricane watch and then warning had gone up, and then we were anticipating a Cat 1. Right. You always plan for the possibility of a category stronger. You don't generally plan for the possibility of something 4 categories stronger.
Right.
And as the day went on yesterday, the concern level kept going up. And when we got to last night, it was even stronger than what the afternoon had suggested could happen. And then, we got a Cat 5 right there on the doorstep of Acapulco, and then coming ashore. And I think Acapulco was unfortunately on the right-hand side of this. And Mike, one thing we don't really know is how strong was it really late yesterday morning and early afternoon before the aircraft recon got in there? Because when the airplane got in there, oh my gosh, this is 125-mile-an-hour winds. So maybe it was a little bit stronger earlier on. So in the future, hopefully we can get the airplanes out there even a little sooner to raise the alarm bells a little louder, just a little sooner.
It seemed like everything was working in this hurricane's favor to take off like it did. Everything was there for it to do it.
Yeah, we thought there was a possibility of it getting stronger than forecast. Just how did it manage to intensify this rapidly at the last minute? I mean, these last few hours, the astronomical increase in intensity was immense. So, I mean, usually you look at the intensification happening over a day and go, wow, that was a lot. But this happened over a lot less than a day. It got to 165 miles an hour. But, Mike, it got there so much faster than we've ever seen before. We thought Patricia 2015 took the cake by far. And now that has been eclipsed.
It's hard to wrap your brains around. Think about it meteorologically. Everything just seems to be juiced up this year. How much influence does something like an El Nino do you feel plays a role in this?
Oh, the El Nino year definitely played a role. 2015's Patricia was also in a strong El Nino year when you have the warm waters that are warmer than average. Of course, the Atlantic's warm too. But East Pacific, you tend to have a busy season and you can have a lot of activity. But the other thing too is there is some deep warm water right off the coast of Acapulco, just like we see in the Caribbean. Although where it did its really rapid intensification, Mike, was after that. So maybe there was a lag. Maybe it tapped into.
It was already baked in by the time it got to the shoreline, basically.
Maybe the really rapid intensification was kind of a lag after going over that deep warm water. And the other thing, it's easy to say after the fact, oh, this is why it happened, right? But not only did it have the weak wind shear, but it also had this tremendous outflow channel into that trough coming into Texas. So it just really, the exhaust was really well defined to take that air out of the top and have that pressure fall at the bottom. So everything was working in its favor. We just don't know how it happened so quickly.
Yeah, and where it stands now, it's inland. likely still to produce some really heavy rain, still gusty winds at this time.
Yeah, we still have tropical storm force winds coming into the Acapulco area. We can't seem to completely clear it out with that trailing band. The surface circulation is going to fall apart, but we're still going to get some heavy rain, and some of that moisture is coming up into Texas.
And when we take a look at the list of intense landfalling hurricanes on the west coast of Mexico, you see these numbers, right? Otis is now at the top all by itself, surpassing Patricia, which again at the time we all thought, oh my goodness, this is insane. Lydia, by the way, is down there at number 5. That happened this year as well. 2 in the top 5 this year alone, this month alone.
Yeah, what a crazy month this has been. Now, Patricia, again, was operationally assessed in 2015 to have come ashore at 160 miles an hour. After the fact, they determined that it came ashore a little weaker. So Otis's final intensity at landfall isn't baked.
It could waver.
Yeah, and Patricia did peak out stronger than Otis did. But in terms of landfall, amazing. And this year, we've had an El Nino year. Busy, a lot of number of storms. Even getting into the Central Pacific, we're already up to 8 majors, and we've had 6 landfalls in Mexico this year, 4 of them in October, and what we've had in terms of where they've come ashore, all of the west coast of Mexico's big metro areas have been affected, including up near Cabo and Tijuana, starting with Hillary in August.
All right, so let's go to Hillary. A lot of you might remember that because we had impact in places like California and places like Palm Springs were getting hit. We got some rain in San Diego. We had effects that went down through the Baja as well, but that just kind of started a chain of events.
And that is also another hallmark of an El Nino year. Back in 1997, we had a tropical storm in California in an El Nino year. Then, after Hillary, then we got to Lydia, and that could have been even worse for Puerto Vallarta than it was because the center of circulation went just south of Puerto Vallarta. If it had gone a little farther north, it would have taken the massive storm surge into that catcher's mitt-shaped coastline that they have. So that was bad. Could have been worse.
Just a few days ago, we were talking about Norma and how it was going to slam us in Cabo, very popular destination for American tourists to go. That got hit hard.
And it was a slow mover, a lot of rain-induced flooding. Cabo's fortunate that it lost some of its intensity just before getting there as a Cat 1. It was a Cat 3 just offshore.
And then, of course, now Otis seems to be the cherry on top, if you will. If you look at what both basins look like, they're insanely warm right now. And could there be then something else forming after Otis? Because you're watching an area down here off the coast of Central America still.
Yeah, the warmer than average waters remain in place on both sides of Central America here. We still have upper level high pressure, so the conditions are there. And this area of spin, that was Tropical Depression 21 on the Caribbean side of Nicaragua. It has crossed over, tapped into some East Pac spin, and now we've got the likelihood of another depression forming. And you notice how with Lydia and Norma being farther west, Otis farther east, this could be even farther east than that.
Could it come back? Could it come from the Atlantic Basin to the Pacific Basin and back to the Atlantic Basin?
It's at least possible. It's likely that it's not going to go very far west very quickly. So this could have an impact in extreme southeastern Mexico or some of these other Central American countries. Now, here's the GFS. The Euro does bring it back. The GFS has a very slow motion off to the west. It's still near Guatemala by Friday, and still in southeast Mexico by the weekend, and then maybe it peters out. That's just the GFS. You know, it doesn't go very far west very quickly. Now, watch what the Euro does. Here's that area of spin, not really strong ridging to the north, and it hangs around and then gets drawn into kind of a Central American gyre kind of setup. And by Monday, here it is coming back across Nicaragua.
That's got to be some concern because you look at these models, they're not in agreement necessarily, but the GFS isn't just making it go straight west either.
No.
So anything could happen over the course of a week's time.
And it increases the chances that land areas could be affected at least by some wind and rain. And what if this system overachieves like Otis did? And also, our Halloween front coming across the continental U.S., that's going to bring some built-in spin down into the Caribbean. And watch that one more time. Watch that front come across, and we'll dive into this a little more deeply. Just as this East Pac system's coming across, here comes our front. This could be a zone of spin for all kinds of reasons, Mike, and that untapped energy in the Western Caribbean. Otis is a reminder that late season systems in El Nino years and the kind of year we're having in the Atlantic can happen late in the year when you don't think it'll happen.
And in that position, more likely than not, the overall steering pattern would be north.
Or at least somewhere toward land areas. Something that forming the Western Caribbean could be trouble. So November could be just as concerning as late October has been.
All right, well, we're definitely going to watch it. Dr. Nab, thanks. Alex?
And a little early snow coming in across sections of the Northwest. Listen in here.
Holy cow, this could be a long winter.
Yeah, you heard him say it. If this is late October and this is what it's like, whew, we may be in for it. This is above. This is what am I trying to say? This is ahead of normal snowfall, way ahead of normal. Your typical first 3-inch snow for parts of Montana wouldn't be expected for another few weeks. Really, mid and late November is when we typically see our first snowfall of this amount, of this caliber. But nope, here we are in late October. And it's happening. Winter storm warnings in effect from parts of North Dakota and Montana back into Wyoming, sections of Idaho, and even parts of the state of Washington under winter storm warnings. So the expansive zone, the huge area, allowed us to reach that naming criteria, and that's why this one is Winter Storm Archer. Look at the footprint of snow from parts of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming all the way up through northwest parts of Minnesota. Huge zone of 8 to 12 inches likely, especially there through North Dakota. Sections of I-94, man, it's going to be rough later today and tomorrow. The naming criteria here at the Weather Channel, it's 2 million people under winter storm warnings and or 400,000 square kilometers of area under those warnings. So in this case, we obviously are nowhere close to the people, but we have 400,000 square kilometers of area or more under winter storm warning. So that is why Winter Storm Archer is the name we go with. The next step will be Bryson, then Kate, then Donovan, then Ember. And if that guy's sentiments are true, we may be making our way well through this list. Here's a look at what's happening right now. We've got Cut Bank at 13 degrees, so no problems getting that snow to actually stick. Not only is it falling, but it's sticking. Those temperatures are really cold. Great Falls is at 17. Minot at 29, 21 in Glendive, 18 for Billings, Montana. Areas that you see the snow now, you'll continue to see the snow later, especially there from Billings up to northeastern sections of North Dakota. This afternoon, this evening, overnight, tomorrow morning. It's still snowing into tomorrow afternoon. So Bismarck, gosh, that I-94 corridor tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, it's going to be a rough go out there. Finally into Friday, the storm begins to lift off towards the northeast, becomes Canada's problem. A little bit of lingering snow Friday morning in places like Fargo and International Falls. But for Bismarck and Minot, double-digit snowfall possible. I think Minot, you may come in more like 8 to 9 inches, but 10 inches likely north and south of that 94 corridor, and that would include places like Dickinson and Bismarck. When we look at Bismarck and the high temperatures headed your way, 45 today, 31 as good as it gets tomorrow with that heavy snow. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, highs, Mike, are stuck in the 20s. Yikes!
Yes, definitely a yikes. That's a great word to use, right? And then you take a look at a place like Wichita, Kansas, where the cold air will invade here as well. 67 right now, and it's going to feel awfully mild compared to where you're going, all right? But we do have flooding that's an ongoing issue for us here. Wichita, Oklahoma City, down through Texas, mild now. But the rain is a big problem for us here. We're going to get so much that we're going to have rising water in some locations. All these areas highlighted in green, the areas to watch for that flooding. Now, look at this forecast. In particular, Red River Valley, that's an area of 3 to 5 inches of rain. Tulsa, that could include us. Norman, that might include us. Gainesville, Texas, maybe down near Fort Worth or even close to St. Angelo. Excuse me. Could be looking for 3 to 5. Maybe in pockets where you get, excuse me, just a little bit more than that. But a large area here where 1 to 3 inches of rain is in our forecast, and it's well-placed rain because we've got ongoing drought here. And this rain on those drought locations is going to be very beneficial. But I'd say this also. There are a lot of places here where we're 2 or 3 feet below where we'd normally be for rainfall for the year. So getting 2 or 3 inches is helpful. It's not going to eliminate the drought, but it certainly is helpful. What it may bring is some flooding, likely flooding through tomorrow morning, including these areas in red and yellow on your map here. It's Texas, it's Oklahoma, it's up around Wichita as well. Thursday into Friday, it's more likely, say, between I-35 and I-45. Like in Austin to College Station to Houston. And then Waco, Dallas, toward maybe, say, a Fort Smith, we could have issues Friday going into Saturday. Today, watching for severe weather. That could include Del Rio, and then eventually getting to the I-35 corridor later on this evening. And I think Dallas, probably after dark for us, is when some of the heaviest of storms will roll in. This is a look at where some of the storms are now starting to flare here. Rain underneath these clouds, a lot of moisture being fed in from the Gulf of Mexico. There it is. I mean, you can clearly see the flow that we have right now, and then everything backstopped right into that line of storms, right? And this is where we have training thunderstorms, storms that are very slow moving, and so now you're getting some pretty excessive rainfall rates. And so in some places, 1 to 2 inches an hour, if not more than that. And a continuation, flash flood warnings right along I-10 for us here. That will include between Sonora and Kerrville here. So if your travels are on I-10, be extra careful here. Kimball and Sutton counties remain under the flash flood warning here. And look at some of the rain in the last 6 hours. Some places exceeding 4 inches in the last 6 hours. North of Sonora, about 3 inches of rain. More heavy rain, in particular, right in here. So I'd say probably west on I-20 west of Fort Worth, and then right into Oklahoma. And then tonight, I-35, we end up getting hammered by the storms. And then tomorrow, moving east, but between I-35 and I-45, heads up for you. All right, still come here on the show. Much more on Hurricane Otis, slamming at Acapulco as a Category 5. We have the latest, and also the next location we're closely watching for tropical development.